To evaluate and graph polynomial functions. So the first step says to decide whether the function is a polynomial function. If so, write it in standard form, state its degree, type, and leading coefficient. So number 4, f of x equals 6x plus 8x to the 4th minus 3. So I first want to know, is this a polynomial function?
No. Yes.
Yes, it is. So it is polynomial. Is it written in standard form?
No.
No, so I need to write it in standard form, which would be what?
Multiply by
8x to the 4th plus 6x minus 3.
Yeah, so it should look like how the stuff in your notes did, where it's written in descending order from the greatest power down to the least power. So the degree is whatever is on the highest power term, so that's going to be 4. The type, see if you have your notes. If it's degree 4, what type is it? Quartic. And the leading coefficient is the number in front of your highest powered x term, so that would be 8. So I usually just write LC for leading coefficient, which would be 8. So that's all the stuff that these problems are looking for here. 6 h of x equals x cubed times the square root of 10 plus 5x to the negative 2 plus 1. Is this polynomial?
Yeah.
What?
No.
Why?
Because it's got the thing negative.
Correct. Not polynomial has a negative exponent. Can't have a negative exponent, and we can't have an exponent as a variable. Or that is a variable. How about g of x equals 8x cubed minus 4x squared plus 2 over x? Would this be polynomial?
Well, yeah,
So can you do something with the negative exponent to make it a polynomial, or it's just not? Like on number 6?
No, if there's a negative exponent, we can't do anything with
Okay.
it.
I think it is a polynomial, but I don't know.
I don't
There's an
think
X
so.
on the bottom.
Because if you put the x on the top, it's x to the negative 1.
Bingo. This one's kind of a tricky one because they all look positive, but I can't leave this in the denominator. That becomes a rational function when that's the case, so I need to move that up. So this would really be 8x cubed minus 4x squared plus 2x to the negative 1. Put it where it ain't, change the sign. So this is not polynomial because of a negative exponent. Or you could say because the variable's in the denominator. Either way would be fine. And you don't have to rewrite it. I just did for a visual for you. All right. The next thing we're doing is solving by direct substitution, and then we'll move into synthetic substitution. So direct substitution, you've done this since Algebra 1. You just take a number, plug it in for x, boom, get an answer. So I'm going to make a note here. This is direct substitution. So number 10, I've got f of x equals 8x plus 5x to the 4th minus 3x squared minus x cubed, and they tell us that x equals 2. So that means anywhere I see an x in this function, I'm putting 2. So I'm going to have f of 2 equals 8 times 2 plus 5 times 2 to the 4th minus 3 times 2 squared minus 2 cubed. And whenever I'm plugging something in, I will pretty much always put it in parentheses so that I don't get confused because, like, for example, on that negative x cubed, the negative is not getting cubed. Only x is getting cubed. So I do that, especially if the number that I'm plugging in is a negative, so that it's really, like, tries to make it as, like, least confusing as possible. So 16 plus, what is that, 16 times 5?
16 times 5.
Is that 80?
Yeah, 80.
Minus 3 times 4 is 12. Minus 8.
$76.
76. So that's equal to 76. Hopefully you like this math.
What do you do with the F of 2 thingy?
It's just telling you that that's what's
That's
getting
still
plugged
Y?
in. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just like why. It's just telling you what to plug in. 14. G of x equals 4x to the 5th plus 6x cubed plus x squared minus 10x plus 5, and x equals negative 2 this time.
Oh, we have a J.
That's
Check.
So
It's like a comic.
Oh, that's a semicolon.
It does look like it's
it does. It's kind of excessively large. All right, so g of negative 2, that means anywhere there's an x, I put a negative 2. This is where it is critical that you use parentheses. When it's a positive number, it's not as big of a deal, but on negative numbers, it is a big deal. So this is going to be 4 times negative 2 to the 5th plus 6 times negative 2 cubed plus negative 2 squared minus 10 times negative 2 plus 5. All right, what's negative 2 to the 5th
Negative 32
times 4?
to 128. Negative 1.
Yep. Negative 128. Negative 2 cubed,
4.
Negative 8.
negative 8 times 6,
Negative 48.
negative 48. Negative 2 squared
2. I'm 4.
plus 4. Negative 10 times negative 2
Plus 20
plus 20 plus 5. And what do I get when I do that?
That's a lot. Negative 8.
149?
157.
What?
It's a negative number.
Negative.
Negative
I think it's negative 147.
So I was right.
You said 49, I thought. You just needed to smush your two answers together and y'all had it.
We only get half of it. Can we do that on the test?
No. Nice try. All right, are we okay with direct substitution?
Yep.
Hopefully that's relatively easy. We're going to move into synthetic substitution. Now, I'm going to tell you, right now we're doing substitution. Later in this chapter, I don't think that it'll be I can't remember if we get to it before Christmas or if that's going to be what we do in those 3 sections after Christmas. But we will also do something called synthetic division. The setup pretty much works the same way. So once you learn the process, it's pretty easy. It's going to look really weird, but it's one of my favorite things to do in math probably. All right, so number 16, f of x equals 8x to the 4th plus 12x cubed plus 6x squared minus 5x plus 9, and x equals negative 2. So, in the box, we're going to make a little box up here, and the number that they give us for x goes in that box. Then we're going to make a row here going across. The terms have to be in descending order, so starting with x to the 4th all the way down to the constant term. If there's a term that's missing, so let's say that this x cubed term did not exist, I have to put a 0 there. It's like a placeholder. Okay, and this will be the same thing when we get to synthetic division. So all I copy down is the numbers, not the variables.
Or the exponent.
Right, just the numbers. So this is 8, 12, and obviously take whatever sign is with it, 6, negative 5, and 9. And I usually like to check like right away to see if there's any terms missing, and I'll even do like the little caret and put like 0x cubed if that's like the term that's missing, so that I don't forget when I'm writing it down like this. So now leave a line, because we're going to be writing in here. It's not straight, but that's okay. This is where you're going to have to watch the process very intently. All right, the first thing that happens is we bring down the first number. So I always draw a little arrow, you bring it down. So bring down the 8. Then we take this number and we multiply it by what's in the box. So we multiply it by negative 2, which gives me a negative 16. That number goes underneath the next number over. So I end up with 12 minus 16, which gives me a negative 4. Negative 4 times the negative 2 gives me a positive 8. That goes underneath the 6. Plus 6 is 14, so that goes down here. 14 times negative 2 is negative 28. That goes underneath the negative 5. Negative 28 minus 5 is negative 33. Negative 33 times negative 2 is going to give me a positive 66, which goes under the 9, and then add it together, and I would get a 75. The answer to your problem is 75.
Whoa! So I don't need to do the thingy with the numbers? I meant the
Correct. Either method will get you the same answer.
That was
like
kind of
this
fun.
one.
That's not actually that hard.
This one's more
It's
fun.
not, but people tend to like, especially when we get to the ones where there's like terms missing, people forget to put in the zeros and all of those things.
Ones like that. Keep doing these.
Well, the next one's going to have a term missing, but now what I'm going to tell you is on the quiz, this is what gets people. I'm going to put on there, you either need to use direct or synthetic. Like I'm going to specify. You need to use that method. You can always check your answer by using the other method also. But to actually get it, you can't just be like, well, I only like synthetic, so I'm not going to do direct. Because guess what? Go and get an X. Okay? Pay attention to the instructions to make sure you're doing it the right way. 18. H of x equals negative 8x cubed plus 14x minus 35, and x equals 4. So the first thing I will always do is look to see if any terms are missing. I have x cubed, then x, then constant. I'm missing x squared. So while you're getting used to it, I would recommend you writing in something like 0x squared. Because if you leave out the 0, your answer will be wrong. Synthetic only works if all the terms are present. All right, so in the box, we use the number that x is equal to, so that would be 4. So 4 is going up here in the box. Then I've got negative 8, 0, 14, and negative 35. everybody here? Okay. So bring down the negative 8. Negative 8 times 4 is negative 32. Plus 0 is negative 32. Times 4,
Negative 128.
Oh, it's easier.
negative 128. Minus or plus 14 is negative 114. Times 4,
Negative 456.
negative 456. And add those up.
Negative 791.
I think it's negative 491.
He added the wrong numbers.
I see.
So negative 491. But hopefully you think this will be a little easier than direct, because if I had to plug in and cube 4 and then multiply it by 8, that's going to most likely take me a little longer than it did to do this. If I don't specify, you can use whatever kind you want, but typically I'm going to specify at least one of each on there. All right, 20. G of x equals 6x to the 5th plus 10x cubed minus 27. X equals negative 3.
It's okay.
You're
The more
right.
zeros we have, the less multiplying we have to do.
You have like maybe
Not necessarily.
It's just adding and subtracting.
When we get to division, sometimes that is the case because of how it ends up playing out. But what do you notice about this one?
They've got the two
Missing a
thingies
bunch.
where it doesn't have things.
What terms am I missing?
X
X to the
fourth,
fourth
two,
and X to
X
the
squared, and X.
Yep, I'm missing 3 terms.
3.
So I would probably just flat out rewrite this one with the zeros in there. So 6x to the 5th plus 0x to the 4th plus 10x cubed plus 0x squared plus 0x minus 27. Now, you do not have to rewrite it. You never have to show the zeros that are missing. I'm just telling you that I recommend it while you're getting used to it, because the most common mistake in synthetic substitution and even in synthetic division is not putting in the zeros. All right, so negative 3 is going in the box. Copying down these numbers. So I've got 6, 0, 10, 0, 0, negative 27. All right, we bring down the 6. Times negative 3 is negative 18. Plus 0 is negative 18. Times negative 3 is positive 54.
Times negative 3.
Plus 10 is 64. Times negative 3 is
Negative 192.
negative 192. Plus 0 is negative 192. Times negative 3.
I
Positive
don't like zeros.
4, no,
Positive 5.
576.
Plus 0 is 576. Times negative 3. You see now, Charlotte, why I said
Yeah.
it's not necessarily less multiplying.
It's
Oh, I did it wrong. Never mind.
negative
Negative 1,720.
600.
No.
700. And then minus 27. Negative 17.
Negative
5. 5.
That's what I got. Negative 1,751. No. Oh wait, no, it's 7. I mean negative.
I don't like the zeros.
All right, this next one I'm going to have y'all try on your own, and then there's one more thing we're doing after this, and then we'll be done. Or, well, 2 more problems, 1 more topic. F of x equals x to the 4th plus 3x minus 20. X equals 4. So,
is true.
All right, do we get an answer?
Almost.
Negative.
What?
It's okay.
It's not negative.
I got this.
Oh heck no.
What'd you get?
What'd you get first? Don't know, I get first.
I got
Hold on.
Daniel. I got one that's
It's
less than
-8.
500.
Me too.
Yeah. Starts with a 2.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ends in an 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
Zero.
Yeah.
Okay.
I accidentally forgot to pay. It's fine.
Stop!
You got one.
Shut up.
48.
All right, what do we get?
Negative
248.
248. Yeah.
248.
Dang it.
Wait.
Hold on.
All right, so we were missing the x cubed and the x squared terms. We had to put in zeros. So 1, 0, 0, 3, negative 20. Bring down the 1 times 4 is 4. Plus 0 is 4 times 4 is 16. Plus 0 is 16 times 4 is 64. Plus 3 is 67. Times 4 is 268. Minus 20 is 248.
Shut up, Zach. I know what I did.
Did you leave out the zeros?
No. When I started, I did the arrow, and I did a 4 instead of 1.
Ah.
And so then I was like a whole step ahead, so I got 1016.
But the step before you got the right answer. I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did.
So
I would've
yeah. So
subtracted.
he almost got the right answer.
I just
You
added.
just over-solved the problem.
He did one.
Is that smart?
He double nodded.
Y'all probably couldn't have done it.
All right, the last stuff in this section is in behavior.
Like a bad.
This is what happens as x gets really, really big or really, really small.
Can we just kill it?
Huh?
So we don't have to.
No, it's not hard. Like,
Bad
it's
behavior.
really easy. All right, so we have the instructions are a little different in how they word things. I'm going to show you how I would write the answers or how I would ask you the question, because the farther on in math that you go, it's not going to be written the way that they're writing it in the book. So I just kind of like override how they do it.
Let's see.
So 28, the problem is f of x equals 10x to the fourth. Now, what I'm going to tell you is obviously this problem only has one term. But if a problem has multiple terms, say if it was like number 22, all I care about is the highest powered term. At infinity, which is what's happening way out there, as x gets really, really big, nothing else is going to make that much of a difference outside of the highest powered term. Everything else is going to be very small compared to that. So this one only has one term, so nice and easy. But the way that we will write it, is the book kind of writes it this way, but they don't write it as a limit, is the limit as x approaches infinity of 10x to the fourth. And we're going to figure out what that is. And then the other one that we have to do them both is the limit as x approaches negative infinity. So essentially as x gets really, really small, or some people will say really big in the negative direction, then what's happening?
I
So
forgot how to draw an infinity.
it's a sideways 8.
I know, but I did it wrong, dude. It was really funny.
You know what else?
Look at this.
Contact Buzz Lightyear. So
You know what else?
It's like a German pretzel.
as x goes to infinity, now with these ones, it doesn't have to be super drastic. And I'm going to tell you, your answer, it's going to be crazy, is either positive infinity or negative infinity. Those are the only two possible answers. You got a 50-50 shot to get it right.
I like this.
Okay?
Can I guess? I think it's gonna be positive for this answer.
Is that
Why?
Because it 10's positive.
Because he has a 50-50 shot.
Okay, 10 is positive. What else?
The 4.
He flipped a
Oh
he
shit.
The
flipped a
exponent
coin.
is positive.
The exponent is, well, more so the exponent is even. So no matter what number I plug in, it's going to be positive, and 10 is positive. So if I plugged in 500, I'm going to get a really, really big positive number. So this one is infinity.
Yeah. Doesn't that mean the bottom is infinity also?
So if I plug in negative 500 and I raise it to the fourth power, that gives me a really big positive number times a positive 10. Still a really big positive number. So this one is also infinity.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can do this.
my sideways 8s don't look correct.
Mine do.
Some days mine look better than others.
Like one's like.
I always think it could be like a little person. Like that's a mask.
Yeah,
Like
that's what I was
Spider-Man.
gonna say.
Can you give him a face?
Just
No.
like
All right, 30.
a jollof.
F of x equals negative 2x cubed plus 7x minus 4.
Look at this math.
So, on a problem like this, notice this one has multiple terms. All I care about is the highest power term. All I am looking at is this negative 2x cubed. Everything else I don't care about. I can throw it in the trash. I can scratch it out. It doesn't matter.
How long have I been asking for that?
You know we can draw on that?
All right, so the limit as x approaches infinity of, and if you want to, without having to rewrite the whole thing, you can just say of f of x, it's referring to the thing above instead of having to write the whole thing out. That's fine. And then we're also going to have the limit as x approaches negative infinity of f of x.
Oh man.
It's gonna be.
All right, so I'm plugging in a really big positive number like 500. 500 cubed, it's going to be some really big number. I don't even care what it is. Times negative 2, what's happening?
It's negative.
Negative, so negative infinity.
Yes. Oh, so we're just substituting anything or just a really big number for x?
Yeah, and I use 500 while it's very dramatic for one like this when we get into rational like equations, which I don't really know if we'll get to that this year, but like when we get to rational equations and we're doing limits in pre-cal, it's easier to see it with a really big number like 500.
So we couldn't do like a 2.
You could, it will work for this problem, but in a rational problem, you'd need a bigger number
Okay.
to see what's happening. All right, now if I plugged in something like negative 500, if I cube negative 500,
And times and times.
all I care about is the sign. What's going to happen?
Positive.
Negative.
What?
Negative number cubed is negative. Times a negative 2 is
Positive.
positive. So this one would be positive infinity. So what do you notice that's different between problem 28 and 30?
There's a negative sign in front of it.
The exponent is not even.
And
Or specifically about the limits. Let's do that.
the okay, one's the same. One's only in positive.
One has both.
And one's everywhere, so it's infinitely infinite.
Okay, so an even exponent. Both limits have to go the same direction. They could both go to negative infinity or they could both go to positive infinity. If you forget, think about a parabola. X squared. Both of them are going up, or if it's reflected, they're both going down. Okay, their limits would be, if it was a parabola like this, it'd be negative infinity. If it's a parabola like this, positive infinity for both. If it is something that has an odd exponent, they are going to be opposites. You can't have them both going the same way because an x cubed function looks something like this.
Yeah, that's what
Okay, they're going opposite, so one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So if you ever have an odd exponent and they're both going the same way, something is wrong. Okay?
Crazy. Anything you draw on a paper, you can graph it on a graph with math and numbers.
Whoa.
So, can I ask a question? Are we not graphing this chapter?
I hope
No.
not.
Okay, because the title was evaluating graph, so
Was it?
We're skipping that part.
yeah.
Because at this point, you can just type it in your calculator and it will graph it for you.
I like that.
But yes, I usually skip the graphing, one, because of the sake of time, because of all the stuff that we have to get through. I like to hit the high points. And two, to be completely honest, even in pre-cal, we don't do a whole lot of graphing. We don't really do much graphing till calculus, and you have your calculator to graph. So, but you can always graph by just plotting some points, being like, okay, well, when x is 1, what is y? Or x is negative 4, what is y? And you can get points that way, which is why I don't really do a whole lot with graphing either, because you should be able to just plot points by this point in your life. So, any questions about these? Are we
How did
okay?
we find the first limit again?
Which one? This one or this one?
Either one.
So is at positive infinity, we're just plugging in like a really big positive number. I mean, you could honestly even use like 5. Just any positive number pretty much will work. I just say 500 to be something super drastic.
Okay.
So could
So we just plug in a positive number for the first one and a negative number for the second one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So could you just theoretically plug in infinity or negative infinity as like a variable and then just worry about the sign?
But it has to be a number.
Pretty much, but you don't know what infinity is because nobody knows what infinity is.
Well, yeah.
That's why we just choose a really big number.
Or really.
But is infinity to the fourth still infinity?
Yes.
Okay. And then infinity to the fourth times 10 is
What
still
about infinity to the 0?
It'd be 1.
I mean,
It's technically an indeterminate form, but
what about infinity times 0?
If infinity goes on forever, that means there's numbers without names.
What about infinity
Correct.
times 0?
This is why imaginary numbers exist.
Why is no one answering my question?
Okay.
What about infinity times 0?
0.
Yeah, because it's everything.
5, 7, 9, 11, 15, 19, 29, and 31.